Hi everyone, this is Steph with Stampin' and Scrappin' with Steph, and today I'm sharing with you these two fun projects that I made for the Stampin' Friends blog hop. Our theme this month, if you can't tell, is a monochromatic theme, and I'm really excited to share how I made these two items. So the first thing that I did was choose my colors, and if you know me well, you know green is my favorite color. So I thought it would be fitting to use this Forever Greenery paper to make the bag. And then my card is done using Old Olive, and I kind of pulled that color from the paper pack. Now, there's so many colors in this pack, so you could choose, I think it's shaded spruce, there's just jade, let's see, pear pizzazz, garden green, pretty peacock, soft seafoam green. So just about all of our greens, with the exception I think of like granny apple and mossy meadow, are included in this paper pack. But I didn't want my projects to be completely solid. I knew if I was giving something as a gift, I wanted to add some fun elements to it. And I thought this pattern really worked well for the little bag. So this is a mini little bag, you can see. It'd be great for some jewelry, maybe like a gift card with some candy, you know, whatever you want, you can put it in there. So I'm going to start with showing you how I made the bag. And you know, there's bags all over. You can search Pinterest, Google, Facebook for little mini gift bags. You can find ones that are made with full sheets of 12 by 12 designer series paper. So, you know, find something that fits your needs. This is one that I came across a while ago, and I decided to once again kind of modify it using current product. So what you need is a piece of cardstock or designer series paper that measures, measures 6 by 9. So this is already cut at 6. One thing to keep in mind when you are working with a paper that has some direction to it, meaning it has a pattern that, you know, if you flip it this way, it doesn't really look right, and if you go this way, it's upside down. So if you notice on this one, these ferns are pointing upright. So you need to keep that in mind when you trim your paper, because if you had taken the sheet of cards, designer series paper, and cut it this way, and your long strip is going here, when you put your score lines in, this print won't appear correctly. I hope that makes sense. But if you're just working with, you know, a pattern such as like this side or stripes or something like that, make sure you just choose the way that you need it to go. So what that means is when you cut it, you want your 9-inch side to have your paper going in the right direction. And what you're going to do, so I'm going to trim this down to 9. And you have a little bit that you could use on another project. And I'm also going to show you a couple alternatives to my cards, just to show you how fun it is to make a monochromatic look. And I'm going to use my Simply Scored scoreboard. I find scoring with a trimmer is fine, but I feel like my scoring is much more accurate using the scoreboard. So I'm going to place this on, making sure my 9-inch strip is at the top. And with the stylus, I'm going to use the part of the stylus that is the wider, like the bigger ball. If you look, there's a little one, and there's the bigger side. And you're going to score at a half inch. And this is 3.5. 4 3/4, and then 7 3/4. And now I'm going to turn it to the 6-inch side, but I want to make sure I'm going to rotate to the left, keeping my pattern going in the right direction. And then for this one, we're going to adjust the score so that I'm going to do, I think this one is 1 1/4. right here, and then the 4 3/4 one, just like that. Now, it'll be tough to see the score lines in the camera. Oops, the lighting causes a little bit of a glare. So I'm just going to fold, and I'm going to start with my top fold here. And I'm going to fold this one opposite so that the reverse pattern is showing. And that is this folded flap right here. Then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to fold in the direction of these score lines. And I am using my bold folder because I want a nice crisp fold. Makes it easier when you're assembling the boxes too. I mean, you could certainly just fold. So let's see. Yeah. And like that. Okay. And now I'm getting one more down here at my bottom. Just like that. So now you can see we have one that folds backwards, and then the rest all folds in the correct direction. So before I assemble the bag, I need a little trim here. So I need to take off this little bit. So, oops, this is your 1/2 inch score line here, and there's this little piece at the bottom. So I'm just going to angle cut like that into the corner, and then trim and take that little bit off. And then on the rest of the score lines, I'm just going to cut up to the score line there, all the way down. And you could adjust and do some, like come in and do a little bit of trimming. I find with this type of bag, it does fit nicely together, but sometimes you get that little bit that overhangs when you're assembling, and once you put adhesive on it, makes it hard to trim it. So let's get rid of that. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this flap and I'm going to adhere it down. So once we start assembling, I won't run into any issues. So I'm just using my Stampin' Seal. You could use the Stampin' Seal Plus for a stronger bond. You could use your multi-purpose liquid glue, whatever you prefer. And as I put that down, I like to use my bone folder to give it a nice press so that I know it all is adhered evenly. And then I'm going to add some adhesive to this little 1/2 inch strip there, right down, making sure to get to the edges. And then we're going to take the opposite side and fold that over and attach it just like this. Now this bag comes together rather quickly, and what's nice is out of a piece of designer series paper or 12 by 12 cardstock, you can make 2 of these. So it's nice that there's not a lot of waste. Now I want to determine the front of my bag. So here's my seam from where I adhered the edges together. So this is going to be the back. So now what I want to do is make sure that this one is going to pop in. So I'm going to put these 2 little sides in. I'm going to pop that one in and add the adhesive here. Again, if you were putting something that had a little bit more weight to it, you could certainly use liquid glue for the tightest bond. Okay, so now you can see this is my front. There's no seam there. And in the back, it might be a little hard to see, but you can see the seam. And then that is your little bag. Super quick. All right, so now to decorate, what I did was I cut, so this is the Ornate Garden combo ribbon. This comes in a 2-pack, and this is the old olive one, and excuse my arm, and then the second part of it was terracotta tile. So I'm going to use the old olive, and I cut this ribbon already to about 8 inches. Now you could do, sorry, I have a little fold there. You could use any ribbon that you have. Just find something that matches what paper you are using. So I'm just going to add some glue dots to the ends of my ribbon in advance. Just like that. And then I'm going to remove it with my Take Your Pick tool. Okay. And then I'm going to start just about maybe 1/4 of an inch from the edge on both sides. And put that one in. And do the same thing. And I'm just trying to eyeball having it sit in the right spot. And then when you wrap it around with the second ribbon, you know, it's important to make sure that they match height-wise. So I just pull up and then stick it down like that. And then if it is a little bit longer, the nice thing about the glue dots is you have a little wiggle room. And that looks good. And what I like to do is add a little staple. So if you can see on my box, I added a little staple to each ribbon. And it's a nice small staple. It's actually retired from Stampin' Up, but it was their Stampin' Up stapler. So the staples aren't very wide and they don't really show up in this paper too much. And if you don't like it, you could actually take a Stampin' Blends in the Old Olive and color that, and the staple kind of becomes invisible. So again, I just want to make sure I'm dealing with my right side. Okay. And now I'm going to add my little leaves here. So I used the Forever Fern stamp set, which is this one here. And I stamped using Old Olive because we are in a monochromatic theme. I used this leaf right here, this one, and then this one. I then took the dies, which are called Forever Flourishing, and I used the coordinating dies to cut those pieces out. And to save a little time, I think we all kind of know how to use an emboss die cutter. And again, use whatever works for you. So what I did was I stamped those images in Old Olive and cut those out. And then in that die set, I cut out just in the Old Olive paper, cardstock here. It is this particular die, and this one, and then one of these little ones right here. And I cut those out, like I said, in the solid paper. All right, and then what I did is I punched a 1 1/4 white circle, and I stamped the greeting hello here at the bottom. You can layer this any way that you want, so I'm just going to pop out the little middle here. It didn't come out when I cut it out. All right, so I chose to stick these on with my glue dots, and I just kind of eyeballed, like I said, where I wanted my leaves to go. And you can do this, like I said, any way that you want, any layering that you want, any color you want. And it's easy if you like kind of press from the inside. And then for this one right here, I don't need this leaf to be quite as big, so I'm just going to trim down and then cut the stem off. And I'm going to kind of do it neatly. I don't want it to look all choppy, but I don't need that whole bit right there. And then I'll add kind of like that. And you could also do like dimensionals if you want to add some layers. Now I'm going to take this little one, this green piece, and this other one, and let's see, let me use my Take Your Pick. So I'm going to stick that one kind of in the middle of those two. And this one kind of pointing down. And then I am going to use a couple dimensionals on the back of my circle. Just like that. And pop that like right about there. And that kind of hides that section where they all kind of come together. And now I'm going to take my ribbon and tie a little bow. Now you could add some rhinestones or some pearls to finish it off. I just thought the bow was enough once it was all together. And again, I'm going to attach that with my glue dots. Use a couple here. And once I have it on, I'll just trim this down. And voila! There is the box. Or bag. Kind of looks like a box. So just really quick, here are the measurements. I'll zoom in just a tad for you. So for the bag, I used a piece of 6x9 designer series paper called Forever Greenery. On the 9-inch side, you want to score at half, 3 1/2, 4 3/4, and 7 3/4. Turn your paper, make sure if you have a pattern that it's going the right way, and then score at 1 1/4 and 4 3/4, and assemble like you would any box or bag. Fold down one edge if you want that dulled paper look, and then fill it with whatever you would like. But I think it's a super cute little bag. And now for the card. So my card is this right here. I'm going to zoom out. Again, really easy to put together. I'm just going to show you quickly the dimensions on my card layers as I read them off to you. So I started with the base, which is a 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 sheet of cardstock, and then score it at 4 1/4. Because of my layers, I'm going to use the bone folder to really make sure that this kind of lays as flat as I can get it. All right, and then we're going to start with a layer that is 5 1/4 by 4. This one I add all of my dimensionals to the back here. And sometimes the backings come off rather quickly for me, and other times I struggle. So, you know, sometimes when your nails are too short, you have a hard time. When they're too long, you have a hard time. But in any event, you could use the piercer, or you take your pick and get that off. All right, and then the next layer is another piece, and I stuck with the old olive, but this is 5 1/4 by 3. This one again is attached using dimensionals. And you know, if that's too much dimensionals for you to use in a card, if you don't like it that thick, just omit it. I figured with using one color as the primary, adding some dimensionals gives it exactly that, some dimension. And then it doesn't look so, you know, one color, because you get the shadows once you do that. Then we're going to take a piece of Whisper White and cut that to 3 1/4 by 4. All right, I'll just set this here. And then you need some strips. They're all 3/4 of an inch wide, but we're going to go up 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to start with 2 3/4. I'm going to make sure we got this right. 3, 3 1/4 is this one, and then 3 1/2. And those are going to get layered onto that Whisper White piece of cardstock. So what you want to do is put these on before you add your adhesive, and figure out your spacing. The Stampin' Seal is a pretty strong adhesive once it bonds to the paper. So if you don't want to struggle, you might want to use liquid glue, because then you have a little bit of time I'm going to keep moving everything once I put them on. So figure out, like I said, your spacing, and then you can adhere them together. And I'm really only sticking it at the top here, hoping that if I need to move the paper, I can. So I start with my 2 outside strips, and then I work my way in. And as straight as I sometimes think it is, sometimes when I get it all assembled, I'm like, oh, that's crooked. But do the best you can. And sometimes you got enough time to move around. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to add our greeting, which says, "You can do this." And that is also from the Forever Ferns set. I'm going to stamp my greeting in Old Olive right here at the bottom space. And then I'm going to take this little splatter, I think, and I'm going to add some ink to it, but I'm going to stamp off like that. And I'm just going to stick that like right there in that corner. And I'm going to do it again, just a little bit down there. Super easy. Comes together quickly. And this is a great way to use some of these pieces of scraps that you might have from trimming your cardstock down that you don't want to waste. But then you hang on to it and you're like, I don't know why I'm keeping all this paper. I never end up using it. So it was nice. I was able to use a bunch of little scraps to make these cards. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is add some rhinestones. And because we did monochromatic, I took my Stampin' Blends, and this is the dark Old Olive. Let me move that. And I'm just going to color quickly 3 little rhinestones. You could do this on pearls as well. You could certainly just use them as the color that they come, but I wanted to keep with the theme. So now I'm going to pop these off and put them on the card. You can use as many as you want. I just thought 3 was okay down here at the bottom. Add some adhesive about 3/4 of the way over. Oops, I did the wrong side. So you really only need the adhesive to like this edge. I came all the way over, but that's fine. And then we're going to attach this on here. And then there is your card. And you can see, you know, from my original to the new one, just how adjusting some of the spaces in between when you line it up makes a difference. So again, here are the layers. We started with the card base, and then our bottom layer is 5 1/4 by 4. Next layer is 5 1/4 by 3. The Whisper White was 3 1/4 by 4. Each strip is 3/4 of an inch wide, and then we're going to start at 2 3/4 and go up 1/4 of an inch. So 3 3/4 by 2 3/4, 3 3/4 by 3, 3 3/4 by 3 1/4, and then 3 3/4 by 3 1/2. And then that is that card. Now I told you I would show you just a quick alternative, which is this one right here. I made this one using some scraps from the Forever Greenery Designer Series paper pack. And then I tied off the same ribbon that I used on the gift bag. And if you're kind of like me, if I'm giving something as a gift with a card, I tend to want them to match. You don't have to. This certainly would work perfect with this bag, and that was my original intent when I designed these projects for the blog hop. But I wanted to show you another way So I used the same paper that I had used on the bag, and then the reverse side for the strips. Same dimensions as before. And then while I was doing all of this, I said, well, what if I wanted to put a little card inside the bag instead of a bigger card being handed? So I designed this little greeting card that is 3 by 3, and I modified the dimensions of what the original card was. It's slightly wider than I needed it to be, but it will, well, I mean, it still fits in just fine, so you could pop that in the bag with no problem. But here are the dimensions on this one. So I took a piece of cardstock that measures 3 by 6, and I scored it on the 6-inch side at 3, in keeping with the same pattern or template. My next layer is 2 3/4 by 2 3/4, which I used designer series paper on. And the layer after that is 2 3/4 by 2. The Whisper White is 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. And then my paper strips, which I used Old Olive, are all a 1/2 inch wide. And again, I adjusted the heights by 1/4 inch. So we're going to start at 1/2 by 1, 1/2 by 1 1/4, 1/2 by 1 1/2, and then 1/2 by 1 3/4. And that's my little mini card. So on all of these, I would add, you know, a piece of Whisper White on the inside so that you can write out a greeting to somebody or a little note. But here are my projects for you today. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to check out the Stampin Friends Monochromatic March blog hop. There are so many fun projects being shared with you today. I hope to see you again, and have a great day. Happy stamping.